You know what time it is? It's mime time. Oh, baby good gravy. Welcome to another episode of Mime Time. I'm your host, Mime, and this show is about Asian diaspora identity and self-actualization, becoming the best version of yourself, where we combine the best of the East and West. Ooh, that sounds like a dope podcast in and of itself. The best of the East and West. So that you, my dear listener, might have a more positive, uplifting, holistic attitude towards yourself, your identity, your people, and the whole world at large. Wow, after 38 podcast episodes, I finally have a succinct intro. I think I'm going to stick with that. I might modify it. You know, this show is a work in progress, fam. I'm a work in progress. I'm no fucking guru. I don't have this shit all figured out. But I like to think that I have figured some things out through my experiences. And I want to share these things with you so that we can have a dialogue. This isn't one-sided. I want to hear from you as well so that we can learn from each other. We can grow from each other to become the cliche, quote unquote, best versions of ourselves, and delve into important issues with nuanced perspective and transform into motherfucking gods, mate. Oh, yeah. Empowered with self-knowledge and the bleeding edge of cultural and philosophical insights to go where no other Korean American with identity issues and lifelong personal insecurities has ever gone before. So for today's episode, I want to talk about heritage. And the idea of heritage deserves its own podcast. Heritage can be defined as cultural traditions, architecture, buildings, language, philosophies, systems of thought that a people collectively share. Specifically, what is your individual racial/cultural/family history? So not just the wider culture, but also your family history. Where do you come from? What family background do you have? I really want to contextualize these things in a way that positively impacts the way we live our lives. What does your heritage mean to you? Are you a direct descendant of a great king from royalty or aristocracy? Or from peasantry? Were your ancestors poor farmers? Were they conquered slaves? Were they warriors? Were they criminals? Were they gangsters? Are you proud of your family or ethnicity? Are you ashamed or indifferent? Do you ever think about these things? What lessons or values can we distill from our past? How can we interpret these things to provide meaning for our day-to-day lives and for future generations? These are open-ended questions with perhaps no right answer, but I'd love to share my thoughts with you as well as hear what you have to think. I'll remind you that I always love to hear your feedback. So if something you hear in this episode really resonates with you or makes you think, please let me know your thoughts. Reach out to me on Instagram at mimetime or email me at mime@mimetime.com. That's M-A-I-M. Yes, my name is spelled M-A-I-M at mimetime.com. Art. So maybe you're of Korean or Asian descent like me, or you grew up as a minority. And you grew up wishing you were born into a different family of a different race. Perhaps, like me, you resented your own ethnicity because to be associated with it only brought more confusion and separation from the other kids at school. Perhaps you just wanted to fit in with the white kids or whichever group you were around. And maybe you did fit in, make friends, while completely ignoring or disregarding your own heritage. I understand what that feels like, that wishing to be something else besides what you are. I suspect some of you might be denying or wanting to run away from who you are. I'm obviously not speaking to everybody, and I'm just speaking from my own experience, so I'm not trying to judge anybody. But if that's you, I want to challenge you. Why are you running away from who you are or from your ethnic heritage? What if I told you, like that meme of Morpheus from The Matrix, what if I told you that you don't need to run from who you are? By the way, funny enough, Morpheus never actually says, what if I told you in the movie? I believe you cannot run away from your heritage, your ethnic background, especially if you're a minority. And what I mean is, you can't deny if you look different from other people. It's nobody's fault that you look different or that you're born with a certain color of skin or hair or eye color or whatever. It's inevitable. Like an Asian kid growing up in a neighborhood where there are no other Asians, where people have never seen an Asian person before. You obviously stick out. People ask you, "Where are you from?" You get triggered because it makes you feel like you don't belong. And you can resent people all you want. You can get triggered whenever people ask you where you're from and then ask where you're really from. You can say, "Fuck you, I'm American, I was born here," or whatever. But you're Asian. You will be until you die. You can get plastic surgery to change your appearance to look like another race, and some people actually do that, but that won't change the past or where you come from. You just can't pick which race or ethnicity you were born into. And you can say all you want, "I'm not Korean, I'm a fucking American," or "Western individualist. Don't put me in a box, man. I don't know karate or kung fu. I don't eat dogs." But you're lying to yourself. I know you love to eat dogs. Just kidding. And because you are tired of people putting you in a box, associating you with the Oriental culture, you consciously or subconsciously attempt to disassociate yourself from all that is Asian or Chinese or Korean. Insert your minority ethnicity here. For example, if you're an Asian guy, the stereotype of Asian men being effeminate, weak, and cowardly is put on you. So out of disgust and spite, you become a bold, weightlifting fuckboy. He's all machismo. He ain't afraid to walk up to girls in the bar and say, "What's up, bitch? Suck my dick. Oh, is this your boyfriend? What? You want to throw down? Bring it on. That's right. I'm not afraid to get in a fight because that's what real alpha men do. I'm not one of those pussy-ass Asian nerds slouched over their computer playing video games, watching anime, hentai porn through their glasses, and being good at math. I don't care about saving face in that backwards Confucian way, never speaking their mind because they're too afraid of how others will judge them." Okay, that's a terrible caricature, and I know not all Asian fuckboys are like that, and I'm not implying that I was ever that kind of person, except maybe that last part about not speaking one's mind. I have resented Asians or Koreans for not knowing how to speak their mind. I'm rambling on, but my point is you disregard your own heritage as you attempt to disassociate from your own ethnicity. But for who? It's not even for you. It's for them. Quite possibly for the opinion of people who don't care about you, who you don't care about. There's that saying that goes like, "We work jobs we hate to buy things we don't need to impress people we don't even like." But then what do some minorities do? Out of a desire to fit in, we disassociate ourselves from our own ethnicity or heritage to impress people we don't even like or to try to fit in, I should say. So what are you actually doing? You're giving them your power. You're still acting in a reactionary way. You don't even know who you are. Granted, nobody knows who they are when they are growing up as teenagers. It's understandable to go through that as a phase. Maybe you've had like an Asian gangster phase where you're all macho and whatever, and you don't give a fuck. But you're reacting to people putting you in a box. So what happens is you end up putting yourself in a box, anything that's not that box. I hope these things make sense to you. I don't know, maybe some of the comparisons and the analogies I'm saying, like, they're overblown. So please take everything I say with a grain of salt. And I want to posit, I want to suggest that maybe if you've had this kind of attitude in the past where you disassociate from your heritage, I just want to encourage those out there who haven't already to consider connecting with their heritage, accepting it, and being proud of it. And we'll get all into that. But now let's talk about Korean heritage and the dark history associated with being Korean. For context, Korea has a long history of collective trauma and suffering, thousands of years of oppression and conquest from China and Japan, as well as fighting between different kingdoms. Korea is like a shrimp between two big whales, China and Japan. We have no power, so we become like a slave to other country. And within Korea, the society, you had the upper class enslaving the lower class, the peasantry serving the elite, just like many other societies. I'm painting big, broad strokes here, so take what I say always with a grain of salt. I'm not a historian. I could always be off about something or some little fact or statement, so feel free to correct me. I always appreciate it when people try to enlighten me. Anyways, you have thousands of years of being subjected to a force that's more powerful than you. There's always an authority figure, the government, your father, your older brother, your boss, abusing you, forcing you, humiliating you. Imagine that trickles down from the top all the way down to the bottom. At the top, the king is subjected to another sovereign power like China, and the king is stressed the fuck out. So he takes out his pain and shame on his subordinates, who take their pain out on their subordinates, who take it out on their wives and their children. Those children grow up and continue the cycle of abuse. This goes on for millennia, to Japanese occupation, to the Korean War, absolute chaos and atrocity, a war on a geopolitical scale that causes further suffering. Countless families, powerless to do anything about the geopolitical situation and the ravages of war, act abusively toward their own blood. Brother against brother, husband against wife, parent against child. These are not a people who know how to love or accept themselves for who they are at large. It's always, do what you're told or else. I went through shit, so I'm gonna take it out on you. So you grow up in this society with parents, teachers, older classmates, your superiors in the military, your boss at the company, all bullying you. These authority figures coercing you to fit in a box. Their superiors acted harshly, abusively towards them, and so they, in turn, act abusively towards you, so that when you get older, you pass on the same abuse to the younger generation. And that's what I call the concept of Han, which fascinates me. I'll go into that in another episode. So, is this a society that knows how to love itself? Is this a society that accepts itself for what it is? Is this a society that teaches unconditional love, known for expounding upon the magnificence and dignity of the soul, and promotes the benevolence of oneself towards others? One might argue, hell no! No society is perfect, of course, but it is far from a society that encourages volition and voluntary mutual benefit over coercion and subjugation, at least in your Mime Time's humble opinion. So, Koreans have an inferiority complex. I saw this in my own parents. They didn't know what they were doing, and they lashed out at others around them. They were the children of the victims of war. One might argue that Korean ethnic nationalism comes from deep-seated fear and insecurity. I think this inferiority complex, which influences all Korean families, affects mine as well, in our own deep, fucked up, dysfunctional way. And so my parents, with the troubles they had with their own parents and their socioeconomic struggles, passed down some of that pain to me. I have my own inferiority complex. And going on a tangent here, I'm not afraid to admit that I have an inferiority complex or that I'm kind of fucked up. I don't really need to save face, because the truth, or at least what I think is the truth from my own limited perspective, is more important to me. The truth is more important to me than saving face. In the past, I wasn't shy about being very critical towards the backwards attitudes or behavior of Korean ways, or perhaps my parents' ways. It's pointless to run away from the truth, so why not just admit it to myself and the world? Korean people and Asian peoples are generally fucked up. And then when something bad happens, or they get in a fight, like when my parents and I got in a fight, they pretend like nothing ever happened, like everything's okay, because they're too, cowardly to be honest with themselves and towards other people. We don't talk about our problems in a constructive way, because we don't even know how to. It's really disgusting to me. That's the kind of shit that made me ashamed to be Asian or Korean. What other things about Korean people or Asian people bother me, or that I'm not okay with? Maybe backwards Confucian attitudes that seem to perpetuate this abuse and stifle innovation and creativity. Geez, that's its own episode. Bowing to authority over seeking and acting on the truth in personal lives and business. Always being subservient to authority when that authority is unjust. Being afraid to speak one's mind honestly, openly, and directly. I hate this shit. I don't want to be identified with Asian people or Korean people who are weak and cowardly. I'm ashamed. Or at least I was. So what is my ethnic heritage as a Korean? Do I just focus on our weaknesses or shame? Centuries, millennia of conquest and subjugation to other tribes like Japan and China and the Mongols. Again, I'll talk about the concept of Han, the Korean feeling of hatred and resentment from being too powerless to do anything about it in another episode. How do I interpret my ancestors? As weak, conquered victims? Here, up until now, I've presented to you the negative or painful history of being Korean at large, painting big, broad strokes. Now I want to go a bit deeper and personal into my own family history. Let's talk about clans. So, Kim, Park, and Lee are the most common surnames in Korea if you didn't know already. If I throw a rock out in the street and it hits someone, chances are it's going to be a Kim or a Park or Lee. But not every Kim, Park, or Lee is the same. As Korean people know, there are Kim clans who come from different Pongwan. It's like your ancestral home from different regions of Korea. There's the Kimhae Kim clan or Kimhae Kimshi from Kimhae. There's the Andong Kim clan from Andong, Yeonan Kim from Yeonan, Gangneung Kimshi from Gangneung, and so on. There's a history associated with each of these clans, and there are supposedly hundreds of them. Hundreds of different clans for all the Kims, Parks, and Lees out there. So I'm of the Gyeongju Kim clan or Gyeongju Kimshi. Gyeongju was the ancient capital of the Shilla dynasty over 1,000 years ago. It's in the southeastern corner of Korea, north of Busan. I doubt my ancient Silla ancestors imagined that one of their descendants would one day be born in another capital city 1,000 years later, only to go to a land called America on the other side of the planet, to come back, be a club promoter, and start a podcast about identity and self-actualization. It's really incredible to think about, actually, how history has brought us all here. I'm super grateful to be here. So, back in episode 26 of Mime Time, I interviewed Aaron Kim, my Korean-German brother from another mother who wrote the book, Pursued by the Maker. Side note, interestingly enough, his book also talks about how he ran away from his problems with a love of surfing. So if you're going to run away from your family or identity issues, do it in a cool way where you go on cool adventures all over the world and have dope stories to tell so that you can write a book about it, I guess. Aaron is also of the Gyeongju Kim clan. Like me, we both found out as we were talking the very first time we met, starting with his family history and heritage. In his book, Aaron says, in what I imagine to be a thick German accent, "According to my father, the Gyeongju Kims were talented intellectuals who were lecturers, administrators, and treasurers of the monarchs in an agriculture-based economy and a feudalistic society. Particularly gifted with handling the financial affairs of the emperor, they were caretakers of the royal assets." Which is completely ridiculous because he doesn't sound like that at all if you listen to episode 26. Aaron's English pronunciation is superb. But when I was reading his 337-page book, I kept hearing this voice in my head as a thick German accent. Anyways, you see, Aaron has worked in finance for decades and still does, and he attributes his affinity for the markets and finance to his heritage as being Gyeongju Kim. And I love money too. I mean, who doesn't? But I like to study about it as well. I understand that Gyeongju Kims were like Yangban, the traditional ruling class during the Joseon dynasty. They were the well-educated scholarly class. They were intellectuals. For me, I like to believe that the people in my family are a particularly nerdy, scholarly, intellectual bunch with an affinity for philosophy. For a lack of a better way to put it, I get this from stories of my grandfather who played violin and spoke English and Russian. He spoke several languages in a time when that was super rare before the internet and YouTube could teach you any language in the world like you can learn today. Like I'm studying French on my phone right now, but back then there was no Duolingo. And I also think about my father and how my brothers and I are wired. My brothers aren't just smart, hardworking professionals. They're really smart and they're really introspective and willing and able to grasp with difficult concepts, ideas, and the deep things about life. I sometimes wonder if there is some correlation between our family clan, being Gyeongju Kimshi, and our own individual genetic mental faculties and capabilities and affinities towards, I don't know, reading books and understanding ideas or being good at money. This is an anecdotal notion. I can't say for sure what it means that something's in your blood. I did study theology and the Bible in college. I read books and academic papers on the Bible, Christianity, religion, faith, etc. So I can say I think the intellectual scholar is in my blood, but I don't really know how to prove that. It's just something I believe. And here's another thing to consider. Most Korean people didn't have last names up until the past few centuries because last names were reserved for royalty or the upper class. Slaves in lower class were eventually able to register their own names with the government census in the past, and they'd pick the name of royalty to hide their lower class background. During the Japanese occupation, everyone had to pick a last name. One of my favorite channels is called The Frog Outside the Well with this professor, Mark Peterson. He knows a lot about Korean history and culture, so he talks about it, all about it on his channel. Umul Pake Keguri, The Frog Outside the Well. I'll give a link to a couple of his videos, including Why So Many Kims? The Secret is Korea's Uniquely Stable History, and another video that was actually made by another person, Paul Becerra, of his huge YouTube channel, The Asian Theory, which is cool. This video features Mark Peterson and it's called Why Do All Koreans Have the Same Last Names? Featuring Harvard PhD. So yeah, I'll link these videos in the show notes. According to my family story of being Gyeongju Kimshi, our own family bloodline, I heard that we come from property landowners up in the north in Pyeonganbuk province, Pyeonganbuk-do, which is in North Korea. So this was a Gyeongju Kim family from Gyeongju, right, which is in the southeastern part of South Korea today. But a long time ago, they were in Pyeonganbuk-do, which is way up in the north, like the total opposite. They owned a lot of property, supposedly. I don't know, like mountains or something, like the size of Itaewon-dong, from I think what my brother told me. And they were owning silver mines and a lot of assets, and that was all lost due to the Korean War or something like that. And well, I mean, people can tell me that in my family, and I'll believe them to an extent. You know, it's interesting to think about. Some things will always be a mystery, lost to history that I can't ever verify for myself. What if some information turns out, I don't know, we find some old document that shows our true lineage. Our family isn't actually from the Gyeongju Kim clan, or like I'm not from the Gyeongju Kim clan. Or what if I found out I'm actually adopted? That's why I look kind of different from my brothers. Maybe my mom had a cheeky affair when no one was looking. I don't know. Crazier things have happened to people, right? I mean, I don't believe at all that I am descended from royalty, and you don't need to be a good person and have a good, long, fulfilling life. But I don't know. Maybe my ancestors were kings. Maybe we were just kings very, very ancient, long time ago. Our ancestors were a very powerful, rich king. I mean, imagine you grew up believing that you descended from a great king, only to realize later that was just a fairy tale your parents told you. Or if you come from a poor family, but like Harry Potter, someone comes and tells you that your real parents were renowned and honorable heroes. Someone busts through the door and says, "You're a wizard, Harry." But all Korean and Asian, like an Asian Korean Rubius Hagrid. "Oh, I am Rubius Hagrid, and I've come to tell you that your ancestor, very, very great king. You are a wizard, Harry, and your last name is not Potter. You are not Harry Potter. You are Harry Kim Pak Lee." How do you process that information? What do you do with that? What if you go through an identity crisis? If you live believing you're one thing only to find out you're another, like you just found out you're adopted, or you thought your family was of proud, I don't know, Irish heritage, but then you do a DNA test and it turns out you have very little or no Irish blood at all. Is the DNA test at fault? Does that mean you're not Irish at all? I mean, that's a whole nother can of worms, talking about DNA tests and heritage. If you're Korean, you can look up a couple Reddit threads, 23andMe Korean problem, 23andMe results for Korean, problems with 23andMe ancestry composition. That's a blog article from KoreanHistoricalDrama.com. That's a deep rabbit hole if you want to go through that. And it's really interesting. Again, do your own research, take everything you say with a grain of salt. No matter what, though, I think being humble is the best way to go forward, no matter what your background is. In the end, no matter what your DNA test is or what your family history is, perceived, imagined, or real, it's your life and you have a choice in deciding your own fucking destiny. So Godspeed. You can stop listening to this episode now. Actually, if you're sick of hearing me talking about it, I'm going to keep going because I like the smell of my own fart. So if you want to keep on indulging in the wafts, then please keep listening. Oh, baby. Now, let me just briefly talk about my parents. My father To make a long story short, lived a very harsh and difficult life. He never grew up with his mom. He was denied an opportunity to even go to middle school despite his school teacher pleading with his parents to buy him a uniform. Supposedly, his teacher came out to the farm or wherever where my dad and his father and stepmom were living, and he saw promise in my dad that my dad had potential to be like a great student or something. But I think my dad's stepmom was like a mean bitch, like some kind of like Cinderella evil stepmom kind of character. And so they just said, no, like he's too stupid. He needs to work on the farm, something like that. So my poor father never got educated, even though he really wanted to. I have no idea how hard his life was growing up in post war Korea with no hope of a future. He worked in construction, and from a story I heard a long time ago, when he lived in an attic in some relative's home, he had books on philosophy on his shelves, and maybe they were even in English or Korean. Either way, he couldn't have been able to read them or understand them. There was certainly 100% a tragic yearning for knowledge and education, better opportunities in life that he never got. And it probably hurt him deeply in ways I couldn't begin to understand. Near the end of his life, he wrote an essay and submitted it to a local Korean American essay compilation. I think he wanted to be a writer. When the time comes, I'll read that essay and translate it and perhaps share with you, my mime timers, my dad's story. In the end, he was a good man who worked hard his whole life trying to take care of his sons. His story really deserves its own episode. Now, my mother grew up kind of well off in her family in her youth, but her family lost a lot of their assets when the government claimed their building decades ago, something like that. Life became very difficult for her after she met my father and started a family. Let's just put it that way. And growing up until my adulthood here in Korea, we weren't always on great terms, but we've never been closer now. And I love talking to her about family history, what being Korean means, identity, and all these things. I can't emphasize enough how grateful and incredible it is that I have this relationship with my mother now, whom I used to hate so deeply more than anyone. I grew up hating my parents because I didn't understand them. I grew up hating Korea and everything Korean because I didn't understand what Korean people went through. To put it simply, now I'm older, I understand. I came to Korea to be an adult and learn how to pay bills and rent and learn about the society and the culture and meet other Korean people. And I'm humbled. I'm grateful for their sacrifices. I want to honor their struggle and bring great honor to the family by being the best version of myself. I want to bring honor to all our Korean ancestors and all Korean people. My generation, my parents' generation, my grandparents' generation, and all the way back, and for the future generations, the next one and the next one after that. So here's a long passage I want to read to you from Self-Reliance, an essay by Ralph Waldo Emerson. I've mentioned this piece several times throughout my episodes. It's been a huge influence to me. Check it out if you haven't already. You might think it's kind of dry and boring because, I mean, this is like from a dude who wrote in the 1800s, so the language is archaic, but I love it because I'm nerdy. Like, I love his style of writing. It's so poetic, and I'm really nerdy like that. Like, I love reading this kind of language. I have a history of reading, the Bible and devotional literature, prayers and poems and songs. I love eloquent philosophy. Maybe it's because of my Kyungju Kimchi background. I don't know. Emerson says, "The relations of the soul to the divine spirit are so pure that it is profane to seek to interpose helps. It must be that when God speaketh, he should communicate, not one thing, but all things, should fill the world with his voice, should scatter forth light, nature, time, souls from the center of the present thought, and new date and new create the whole. Whenever a mind is simple and receives a divine wisdom, old things pass away. Means, teachers, texts, temples fall. It lives now and absorbs past and future into the present hour. All things are made sacred by relation to it, one as much as another. All things are dissolved to their center by their cause, and in the universal miracle, petty and particular miracles disappear. If, therefore, a man claims to know and speak of God and carries you backward to the phraseology of some old, moldered nation in another country, in another world, believe him not. Is the acorn better than the oak, which is its fullness and completion? Is the parent better than the child into whom he has cast his ripened being? Whence, then, this worship of the past? The centuries are conspirators against the sanity and authority of the soul. Time and space are but physiological colors which the eye makes, but the soul is light. Where it is day. Where it was is night. And history is an impertinence and an injury if it be anything more than a cheerful apologue or parable of my being and becoming. So I think good old Ralphie boy here is just saying, don't make a big deal out of history or the past, because your soul is all present and powerful, and God speaks through you now. This doesn't mean don't study history or the past. You definitely want to, at least I want to, but it's only for your sake and to build your life today. Don't let the yearning for past empires or what other great people have done discourage you from realizing your own individual power and greatness, but let it encourage and inspire you. History is only important, practical, and relevant insofar as it benefits and enriches me, making me a better version of myself. If this story is true, that I come from some noble, honorable, magnificent lineage of scholars and propertied landowners and whatever the hell, then I stand on that knowledge proudly yet humbly because I did not earn it. I have to do better. I have to earn my own self-esteem. I have to build my own empire, my own mini-kingdom, my own house, figuratively speaking. And let's say my lineage and genetic heritage is nothing more than uneducated, destitute, weak, and conquered peasantry, slaves, backwards, racist, misogynist, abusive. Let's go further. Let's say they were murderers and child rapists. Let's say my great-great-grandfather was but a horrible PC bong owner. Let's say I come from the worst of humanity. Like, imagine my father and my grandfather and all the way back are just the worst people you can possibly imagine, according to your own judgment and criteria. Well, what's the truth? Do you come from royalty or peasantry? Do you come from the best that humanity has to offer or the worst? No matter what the truth is, no matter what my past or family, racial, ethnic, or genetic heritage is, I will build myself for my future, for my legacy, for myself. I will live for myself. If I come from greatness, then I must become greater. If I come from weakness or lameness, if I'm the lamest motherfucker on the block, or I think my family's lame and there's no one in our family who's done anything that I'm proud of, if I come from the Lames family, my name is John Lame and my dad was Robert Lame, and we've been lame in our family for hundreds, if not thousands of years, then I have an opportunity to prove to myself and show the world that I can become better. Like being the first person in your family to graduate from college. I mean, back when college was valuable and not this insane modern trap that puts you into debt. Or you're the first person in your family to have a profitable career and succeed in whatever definition, or make great art. No matter what my background is, I can still become a benefit to society and to my family and live a meaningful life. No matter what my past is, I can choose to strive to become better. I must strive. If you have a heritage to be proud of, then let that humble you and encourage you to evolve into a better human being. Humility and pride are not mutually exclusive to me. That's a false dichotomy. Oh, if you're proud about something, then that means you can't be humble. Or if you're humble about something, that means you can't be proud about it. No, you idiot. And by idiot, I'm talking to myself. You should be proud of the things that you've accomplished and the things you can do and who you are, because it builds your self-esteem. And that's good for everybody. That kind of pride, which is not toxic, but it's like self-esteem, that's so crucial for loving yourself. You also want to be humble because it grounds you and makes you appreciate the people who came before you and the opportunities you have today, and it makes you want to be better. It makes you grateful. That can help you love yourself and others who have sacrificed before you. If you have a heritage you're ashamed of, then see that as an opportunity to break a pattern and bring honor to yourself and your family and your people. So, where am I now? I love my heritage and I'm grateful for it. I love my family. I'm proud of my family's history, even though much of it has been filled with darkness and suffering, because there's so much hope and potential being realized in my life and my world. I love my mother and father and forgive as much as my heart is capable of any negligence or abuse or shortcoming on their end. I'm proud to be Korean and I'm proud to be American. Not like I did anything to deserve these things or that I've contributed in any great way, but that I'm humbled and honored that others who came before me built the foundation for the life I can live today, and I'm eternally grateful. And I wouldn't be able to appreciate all these things to the intensity and joy that I do now if it weren't for the struggle and suffering I experienced with all the issues involving my identity, my family, my upbringing. Otherwise, what choice do I have? I could be indifferent, or I could succumb to nihilism. I could say, oh, my family's so fucked up and I'll never get it. I'll never succeed. It's not even worth trying anything or improving myself or my life. Oh, so our parents and their parents and their parents lived and suffered and died so that we could have the luxury of nihilism. They didn't have that luxury. Which is more likely? That your ancestor 100,000 years ago, struggling to survive in the elements, I don't know, imagine seeking shelter in caves and protection from other tribes, trying to catch prey and forage for berries. Did they even have the time to contemplate the meaning or purpose of life? Well, maybe they did when they were looking up at the stars in the Milky Way from time to time, but were they nihilists? They were too busy being hungry to be nihilists. They would have killed to be in your position and have first world problems like this. Okay, to be fair, I don't know what you're going through. I'm sure you mime timers have gone through some terrible shit that makes you hate your family and heritage, but I hope you see what I mean. That there's hope. So, I choose to seek my heritage, to understand it, to learn where I come from, so that I can be wiser, humbler, grateful, compassionate towards myself, toward Korean and American peoples, to people of every tribe and tongue on this beautiful planet. I learn about the past, my past, to give me perspective on my present. And I frame this foundation as the launch pad for my future, for the next generation, for all generations. Of course, your story and the purpose of your life situation and family background and ethnicity can be completely different from my own. You could be Chinese, Japanese, Vietnamese, Thai, Arab, Indian, English, Scottish, American, Mexican, Brazilian, Indonesian, Pacific Islander, whatever. Your answer and your path will be different from mine. I'm not saying that I have the answer, but I hope that even just by some of you listening to my story and hearing my thoughts, that it can help add to your framework, your attitude, your life philosophy in a way that makes you prouder and fulfilled to be who you are as an individual human being. I'm really humbled and proud of my heritage because it's what brought me here today so that I can share my story with you and tell you how grateful I am that you're listening to me right now and that we can have this connection, and to tell you that I love you and I believe in you, whoever you are listening to this right now. You're not enslaved by your past, you're empowered by it to live the greatest life you possibly can and to be the dream person you've always wanted to be. May God, Buddha, King Sejong, Ralph Waldo Emerson bless you. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you next time. Mime time!